Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. And I have a personal friend. I can call Carl that. He lives here in San Diego. I live in Encinitas. He's actually down in PB. And I've known him for years. We've made contact over previous books, his memorabilia book. And he has a new book out.
It's murderabilia.
Murderabilia, I'm sorry. He
That's
has a
all
new
right.
book out called Saving Myles, a novel. And it's an intriguing novel. And many of my listeners that come to this show are definitely going to want to read this. He's won many awards for it. And I'm going to tell our listeners a bit about you, Carl. Carl Vonderau is an award-winning author of crime fiction. As a child growing up in Cleveland, he loved to write. His ghost stories scared the bejesus out of other kids. We got that coming up because it's going to be Halloween. But it took a long time to become a full-time author. He left Cleveland to study at Stanford, and he spent more than 30 years as a banker in the U.S., Latin America, and North America. Those international settings were sources of inspiration for his books. His first novel, Murderabilia, was published in 2019 and won a Left Coast Crime Award and the Best Debut and a San Diego Book Award for Best Mystery. His second novel, Saving Myles, was just published in August of this year. We're only a few months from there. He worked with nonprofits, also important to Carl. He's president of Partners in Crime, the San Diego chapter of Sisters in Crime, an organization that supports authors and fans of crime writing. He's also volunteers with San Diego Social Venture Partners to mentor other nonprofits. And he lives in San Diego. His two grown sons live close by. And he says he wonders how he knows so much about serial killers and banking crimes. Well, this book is going to be, it's because maybe he experienced some of this himself.
Who says families don't have secrets, huh?
Exactly. Well, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth. And actually, this while this story has got intrigue in the novel, I'd like for you to tell the listeners about Saving Myles. It tackles some gripping and emotional topics. Can you give our listeners a brief overview of the story and what inspired you? Because you have prior books about, crime and murder and whatever. But this one's interesting about a kidnapping in Tijuana and some crazy things that the parents or the father gets involved in. Can you speak about it a little bit?
Sure, but first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be part of Inside Personal Growth. Thanks very much, and thanks to
You're
your
welcome.
listeners as well. I, many things inspire me to write a particular book, and in this one, I'd read The Firm by John Grisham many years ago, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like if a bank was owned by criminals. So that was kind of banging around inside my head for a long time. But the other side is that my books are character driven, probably more than they're plot driven. And so my motto is that behind every crime is a family. So both for the perpetrators as well as the victims, the family really influences what happens in the book because of the crime. So, you put those two things together. I was thinking too that, there are not many books done about money laundering. So I thought that would be it. And then finally, I've done banking in a number of countries, and my books are multinational in a sense. So I've got characters from Montreal, from San Diego, as well as Tijuana. So those international aspects are important part of the book. and you want me to tell you a little bit about what the book?
No, we can go into these questions, and I think what'll happen is it'll build on it because that's what this is about. It's a novel and it builds, and you want that kind of intrigue. Now,
Yeah.
as you say, this book has family, and it also
Yes.
has parent-child relationships.
Yes.
I'd like you to share the insights into the dynamics between Wade, the father, Fiona, the mother, and their son, Myles, and how this relationship impacts this narrative in this book. Because there is this, now I don't know if I want to call it dynamism, but there is this interesting relationship that's going on between these family characters.
Right. Well, there very much is, and there's nothing so interesting as a dysfunctional family. So, we've got 3 points of view in this book: the Fiona, the mother and wife, Wade, the father, and Myles, the teenage son. And Wade has been a workaholic father, influenced by his own father, who worked himself to death. This is his idea of success. As a result, he's been absent raising his son. And he feels remorse for that, and wants to create a better relationship with his son and with his wife. His wife, she got pregnant very early and feels as if she had to give up her adventures in her 20s to raise her son. And her son has had lots of problems, and she's really rescued him. But when his problems really come to the fore in the beginning of this book, she feels responsible for it. She's also, she runs a nonprofit organization that helps save street children in Mexico. It's an orphanage. And that, in a sense, is kind of a redemption for her for the way she feels about how she's failed at raising her son. Myles, on the other hand, has always wanted to be closer to his father, but his father was never there. And Myles additionally he repeated first grade, so he has this feeling of inadequacy as a result of that. Now he's a teenager. He both wants to be close to his father, and he really resents him for not being trying to be closer to him. And he, of course, as a teenager, is totally influenced by romance and love. So girls are hugely important. He's very idealistic.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, and I think the drug part is the part where you kind of see this story take he goes into this treatment center after what you call a streak of harmful behavior, right? Um,
Yeah,
After a year of treatments, he
yeah,
comes home, as you say in the front of this book, with some seemingly rehabilitated. Seemingly is probably the right part.
yeah,
And then he heads to Tijuana to buy drugs, and he's kidnapped when he's in Tijuana getting these drugs supposedly rehabilitated from. Um, could you speak with us about this part of the story? I mean, it's
yeah.
really cool how you wove this all together.
Sure. Well, first of all, when his mother found these drugs, OxyContin, in his closet
Yeah.
when he was 16, and there the parents have the choice of, you have to save your kid's life. Your kid is now beyond you. So they sent him to, against his will, to a residential treatment center in Utah. And these are can be really tough places.
Yeah, they are
Tough
tough.
love, tough love, very much like the military. His son hated it, but he came back with a much more sophisticated method for manipulating his parents. Because, there's all kinds of psychological investigation that gets done at these, and they come back with supposedly new attitudes and new ways to be more successful in life. But he, of course, resents his parents for having sent him there. He's very attracted to girls. So when a girl wants to score drugs in Tijuana, it's like the perfect revenge and the perfect opportunity to really get back at his parents, even if he doesn't tell them. So that's what he does. And when he's in Tijuana, he has to pay for these drugs in a garage. But there's always a bit of goodness about him and heroism. He says, no, the girl cannot come with him to the garage because he thinks it's too dangerous for him,
Mhm.
for her. He does it and he gets kidnapped.
So he's
So,
kidnapped. He's kidnapped, and at this point, there's a ransom. And it was
yeah,
interesting. You weave another character in here, which is Andre, the banker.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and the father, Wade, decides to get involved and sign an agreement with this banker to work for this bank to get the money he needs for this ransom. Um, and then he becomes indebted to this cartel. Explain that the story between Andre, this crooked hell banker, and what's going on.
Well, Andre, I think in many ways is one of the more complicated characters in the book because he is also has a new age philosophy. He very much wants redemption for what he's done in the past. He follows a lot of sort of Jungian principles, and he looks at the spiritual elements of alchemy. So he's got these two sides to him. He's also laundering money, and he's married to a woman whose family is involved with the drug cartel. But Wade doesn't know this. And neither does Fiona. Fiona has always admired him. She works for Andre and his own foundation. She's admired him for being, a spiritual man and a successful banker at the same time, the sort of anti-Wade. So she pushes that they get involved with Andre. And Andre says, look, I'll lend you the money. I'll help you negotiate, but in return, I want Wade to help build my commercial real estate at my bank. Wade's a star banker, but what else do you do? They don't have the money. So when Wade goes there, he finds out that there's some really sketchy things going on at the bank.
Yeah, it's a really good part of the book. Now, you know, you mentioned this, and I know you maybe don't want to get into this so deep, but in the writing process, I'm going to ask this question. Did you draw inspiration from real life stories or individuals who'd been involved in similar situations to those depicted in the novel? And I know you did because you said you did. Do you want to comment about any of this? Because a lot of times when
Yeah,
a novelist writes a novel like this, I was just on with another gentleman and he called this a life fable. Well, this whole life fable that I'm holding in my hands here, he then admitted it was about him,
yeah.
right? No, he
My,
changed the characters' names.
yeah.
So I'm sure you're not as crazy as many of these people in this story, but tell us if there is a connection, and if so, where might it be?
Well, I mean, we had a situation like this that happened in our family almost 20 years ago. Excuse me. And
I'm getting you all choked up. You got to talk about this
nah,
now.
yeah, well, what can I say? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. And but I don't comment on the particulars of that situation. But kids that have these problems are quite common now. And the way it's portrayed in the first chapters of the book is quite often the way the parents deal with the situation. They find
Right.
a wilderness program, residential treatment center,
Send them somewhere.
send
Yeah.
them somewhere. These two strangers they've hired, they've never met before, show up to accompany them there because the kid won't go willingly. And, and it probably breaks their marriage apart. So these things happen. It didn't happen to us. I mean, I've been married for more than 30 years. So the way that happened with us was different than this.
Yeah.
And there was
But
no
it but it but
no
it is a way
Oxycontin involved. No
right.
Oxycontin.
But you did have a real life kind of situation, and I've
Yes.
had one myself, so I could relate to that as well. The book explores this kind of dark side of humanity. You were just talking about Andre. It also highlights resilience and the strength of the human spirit. Um, can you share some of the moments of kind of hope or triumph in this story. So far, all we've talked about is the problems and challenges and
Yeah.
the cartel and the kidnapping and the kid on drugs. And where does it take a turn, Carl?
And then they die.
Well, I think Joseph Campbell always said, if in the hero's journey, at some point, most of all of these stories are, I wouldn't say all of them, but many of them are about the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Very much, very much. And this is very much a hero's journey novel, and that the three of them have a hero's journey: the father, the mother, and Myles as well. I think there are lots of turning points here. For instance, when Myles is kidnapped, his father goes to Mexico and thinks about all the way he's failed to be a good father. And he thinks also that Myles they've tried everything and they just can't help him. And his son is incorrigible, but he should have been a good father. And then he thinks a good father would never give up on his son. And he doesn't the rest of the book. Myles comes back determined, feeling that he's responsible for his father having to give up a career, a really good career, to work at this other bank. And he wants to be a better person. He's trying to be a better person. He's trying to do the right things. Fiona realizes that what's most important in her life, she's having an affair with a much younger man. She realizes that her family and the way that Wade needs her now is more important than any of that. And it causes her to fall in love with him again. One of my favorite parts of the book is when Myles has fallen in love with this teenage girl, and he asks his mother how she fell in love with Wade. And you can feel the attraction that she had when she first fell in love with Wade. And it's also a very special moment for her because she gets to experience her son really falling in love for the first time. Little does she know it's with the wrong girl. But those are...
There's always got to be a twist in there
somewhere. Yeah.
It's okay to fall in love. Just make sure it's with the right girl.
Right,
but no, not in this book. Not in Saving Myles.
Not in this book. No, I mean, there's a part where the father is trying to persuade Myles that, I know it's tough, but one of the saddest things in life is that sometimes there are more important things than love. And the teenager doesn't even hear it.
Right. Of course not. The hormones are running very intently.
He's going to save this girl. Yeah.
Well, tell us now, the book, you've received all kinds of acclaim. It's got a gripping plot and character development. And I heard you on another podcast talking with the guy about all the advice you got from your writing coach, the people that you helped you put this together. Can you tell us about your approach to crafting? I think many people out there who are listening might be interested in writing a novel. They maybe haven't written it yet. A suspenseful yet emotionally resonant story. And it's quite a craft to be able to do this, and not everybody's cut out to doing this. I mean, these books take you a long time to write, and they go through many, many editings. And it's a team effort, isn't it?
It is. It is. I tell people that my two most important qualities in writing have nothing to do with writing. Mm-hmm. And that is that patience and tenacity. Mm-hmm. Those are the two most important things. You can get better as a writer, but it involves rewriting and getting outside advice on where your writing is good and where it fails. So I've gone through a lot of that in critique groups, etc. I mean, the problem that most beginning writers have is they send out material before it's ready because they haven't gotten enough feedback. Because you've worked so hard on a book, it's really everything inside you.
You get anxious.
You get anxious, and
Yeah,
you think you've gone through it so many times, you think it's wonderful.
right.
But it's not. And that's where you need you need a critique group. I mean, many times I have one, and I've been with them for 10 years now. Many times I'll think that I've done something brilliant, and they'll say, no, you missed the barn on that, this and this and this problem. And other times I'll think it's not particularly good, and they'll say, well, this is really quite fine. So my secret has been rewriting.
Well,
I
you've said the two secrets were tenacity, right? You
Yes,
just stuck
and
with it,
patience.
and patience, because how long did it actually take you to evolve from the concept and the plot of Saving Miles, to writing it, to getting it published? What was the time frame there?
I was like 4 or 5 years,
So,
yeah.
for my listeners, don't be
Yeah,
in a hurry. Carl's a guy who hasn't been in a hurry. And for that reason, his patience kind of won out. And look at the acclaim and awards he got. Now, look, there's lots of stories that hit the big screen, right? Whether it's
yeah,
Netflix or it's Amazon or it's
yeah.
whatever. Are you being chased, and or are you chasing anybody about turning this into a movie?
Well, that's an interesting question. I had some interest from Hollywood for a TV series 3 weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
but we were waiting till after the writer's strike, and it was a good director. And then a day before we were supposed to have a big Zoom meeting, he canceled it because with the end of the writer's strike, some projects that he thought were buried had now come to the fore.
Hmm.
So we hope that at some point, we'll have some interest in this.
Well, I hope you do too. You know, Carl, I'm going to ask this, and it's not redundant, but the story about this family caught up in this crime, a son who's drug addicted, and the plot to obtain the funds and the ransom, this allows the reader's mind to go in a lot of different directions. But in the end, do you believe it allows a reader to understand their own challenges they face in life a lot better for having read a novel like this? Because it gives almost like it's so suspenseful, it draws them in. It's kind of like a real life story. What would you tell the listeners out there?
Well, I would say, like in the hero's journey, the characters have to learn something internally that helps them survive. And I think any family, particularly one with teenagers, sometimes it's a point of the family doesn't look like it's going to survive.
Hmm.
But I think the theme of this book is that no matter how broken your family is,
Hmm.
and no matter how troubled your son or daughter is, there are still ways to come together and forgive each other and learn to cherish each other again. And that's what happens in this book. I think also it comes with a lesson that love means great sacrifice, and all of them have to learn how to sacrifice something.
Well, certainly Fiona, certainly Wade, and certainly Myles had to sacrifice quite a bit. And it's truly clear and evident that you've allowed these characters in what may not be in somebody's real life who's reading this, allows them the intrigue of what maybe whatever their challenges are, to look at them in a different way, maybe with not so much challenge as you exemplified in the book. What would you like the readers to take away from Saving Miles, and what lessons might they draw from your really suspenseful and thrilling story that you've created here in the book? And for my listeners, uh, it's Carl Vonderau, VONDERAU.com. Go to that website. There, you're going to learn more about the book. You also can see him up on YouTube. There's some videos of him having done interviews. This podcast is going to be everywhere, Carl. It's going to be on iTunes and Spotify and YouTube and all of those places. So please, once you guys get this, go out and check out Carl's website. Go to Amazon and get a copy of the book. And Carl even has a spot at his own website. If you want to contact him, there's a contact there. There's a newsletter there. There's news there. There are events. There's book clubs, and the other books that he's written. So I encourage you to go look at the events. He just told me a minute ago he's going to be back in his hometown speaking pretty soon. It looked like he's been around, like he's going to the book shop, which is October 21st from 1 to 4. And then November 4th, he's going to be at Men of Mystery Conference in Long Beach. And then on the 11th, he's going to be in Partner in Crime virtual discussion. And all of these things you can find more. And he'll be at Diamond Bar Library, which is a city just a little bit north of us, in November. So you've got a pretty packed schedule here for the next month or so, Carl. So
It is. It'll be fun.
yeah, this is going to be fun for you.
Yeah.
What is it that, in that last question I asked you, what are the lessons you want the readers out there, the listeners out there, to kind of take away?
I think never give up on each other in your family, and being open to change to make things better. I think those are the lessons. They're pretty basic, but they're so true and so hard at the same time.
Very insightful. I think, change, and not being so hard on yourself, right?
Right.
These are lessons. Forgiveness, right? Forgiveness and compassion for not only yourself, but for others, I think is true. The fact that you were talking about Fiona and Myles and her kind of seeing him in a different light, that's very, very important. Even though all his choices weren't perfect, we all make choices at times that aren't perfect. And this is about a family that made some choices that probably could have been evaluated a lot better. But if that was the case, there'd never be a novel. So
we become better people because we screw up.
yeah. So again, for my listeners, go to Carl's website. He says, behind every crime is a family. And I think this most recent one that we all know about, because he used Oxycontin, is the Sadler family. And I've heard some pretty eerie stories about that family. And that's definitely a family that was really screwed up.
I've also always said that money just amplifies problems.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of money there and a lot of problems. You got that right. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on Inside Personal Growth to talk about your book, Saving Myles. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you over coffee pretty soon one day after you finish this crazy tour that you're on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on. Appreciate it.
All right.